so totally me. So we're going to go over there and meet some, and Krysten, we had an adventure that we can't get into the details now. Would you like to come with us?
I absolutely would.
Oh, I'm so delighted.
And whenever I helped, whatever mood I was in, that whole plan would end up with that mood.
Oh,
and then
that's
eventually I
interesting.
ended up sending an army of gingerbread men against somebody who I didn't really like. And that's when they decided that I probably should go get trained.
Being powerful does have its own, I guess, drawbacks. You do make something of a target of yourself.
Right.
To unscrupulous people who might want to try to take what you have.
Wow, guys, that was really cool. We got to meet some of the deans and
Right.
Oh,
I'm so excited for classes tomorrow. Absolutely. I wonder what our first classes will be.
yeah.
We're going to have to look at the schedule. When do we get
There's-
our schedules?
So when you guys come back into your rooms, each one of you has like an envelope sitting on your beds.
Oh,
Okay.
cool. Let's open it.
Schedule,
Oh,
schedule,
let's
schedule.
open it now.
So, your first week of class. So, as I put in the cheat sheet, there are 9 days in the week.
Right.
So it's Shield Day, which is kind of the start of the week. You'll have 3 days of classes, and then a break day on Boom Day, and then 3 more days of classes, and then basically your weekend, which is Arch Day and Shield Day.
Okay.
So call day dawns bright and early, and you assemble at the main classroom for arcane magic and things like that. So you guys kind of have a chance to wander a little bit around campus before, but you're going to the arcane building right now. You're in like a large kind of like exhibition room right now, and Professor Trickfoot, the gnome, and Professor Thalassin, the red-haired woman, basically get up in front of you and start explaining what you're going to be learning that year. So a couple of things they basically talk about, like the nature of arcane magic as something that comes from within you, or from like your own like experiences and knowledge, rather than divine magic, which comes from like a higher power. They talk a little bit about the classes you'll be taking. They say the first year class list right now is Introduction to Somatic Gestures, which is the hand gestures and the like foci that you use for that. And then a class on High Elder Tongue, which is the language that most spells are written in. Professor Thalassin is a lot more kind of laid back about it. Every time Professor Trickfoot kind of goes on a tangent about something completely unrelated to what you're talking about, she kind of like taps her on the shoulder and gets her back on course. It's very clear that Professor Trickfoot is incredibly intelligent, but she has a lot of trouble focusing her intelligence on what she needs to focus on rather than what catches her attention.
Sounds very interesting. I like her a lot.
Yeah. She and Professor Thalassin both basically do some examples of magic. They talk about the different schools of magic, and the way that each of these spells interact with each other. Professor Trickfoot, towards the end of she's demonstrated several very convincing illusions. She's like made doubles of herself show up and do different things. She's made like a door look like it's not there anymore, and yet and she invites someone to go up and touch it, and they're like, the door isn't here, and then she just goes and opens it up, and there's the door. So she's a very convincing illusionist, and she mentions that she is also the head librarian. So she invites you all to come to the library.
That's Professor Bella.
Trickfoot. Yeah. She invites you to come down to the library if you're ever looking for anything interesting to read. She starts to mention something about more dangerous magical tomes in the restricted section and all this other stuff. And Professor Philosophy is like, maybe we should talk about that to the new students. And she's like, oh, yeah, that's probably a good idea. Anyway, can't wait to see you guys in class. Thanks. And so you guys leave. That's pretty much your whole day. It's been a couple of hours. So Scry Day, you're directed to come to one of the upper levels of the arcane building. It is a large circular room with a circle like a silvery metal kind of inscribed on the floor. As you guys are walking in, Professor Ellereth is like scribing something on the floor. He's using like a piece of chalk and is like writing symbols on the floor, and kind of talking about. He's talking to a couple of like older students who are probably his like assistants. And as you kind of come in, he gestures for everyone to kind of take a seat around and look at everything. He starts to speak for quite a while about like the nature of summoning magic. He says you've probably already learned a little bit about conjuration magic from Professor Trickfoot. Summoning is a bit more dangerous than that. He talks about the circle and how you have to scribe this circle in a certain way with certain symbols to ensure that anything you summon will be trapped within it. He talks about the different types of creatures that can be summoned. He introduces his dog creature as Brufum, which is one of his trusted companion. He calls him a mage hunter. Basically, he can smell arcane magic and divine magic. So that's probably why he was so like interested in you, because you have a lot of magic.
And what is his name again?
His name is Brufum. Bruufum. So as a kind of culmination to the class, he actually summons something. He finishes casting the spell, or the circle. He casts a spell, and a large, like, four-armed like creature. There's like a smell of like sulfur and brimstone, and this creature like crawls into existence in the center of this circle. So he's basically like lecturing on this creature that he's summoned as it's kind of stalking around the circle, like looking for something. He's not really paying too much attention, and one of his assistants spills something, and it crosses the line and erases, like she spilled some water, and it erases one of the symbols, and immediately this monster kind of zones in on that as if he could tell that there's something wrong, and like slams himself against like this kind of barrier that's there, and you see in the air briefly there's like a crackle and this kind of like bluish lightning, almost as if he like cracked like an invisible piece of glass that lit up when it was cracked. At that, the professor kind of like looks over. He goes, and he like shakes his head, walks over to his desk, and picks up something that looks like a rod. Points it at the creature, right as it rips through this like invisible barrier, and starts like running towards him. He points it, and you can almost feel like the arcane magic activating, and the creature stops in its tracks. And then he's like, go back to where you came from, and like makes a gesture with the rod, and the thing disappears. He puts the rod down. He says, "My apologies," and then glares over at the assistant who did that, who's kind of not meeting his eyes, like wiping up the water that they spilled. He dismisses you. He tells you that the first year classes are the geometry of magical circles and defensive spells for the discerning mage. So, Charm Day. So Professor Nilo, true to her word, has kind of like a stage set up. The Bardic room, or like one of the Bardic classrooms, is more kind of like an amphitheater. The seats are all kind of like almost like an auditorium, and there's like a big round area in the middle with a couple of raised platforms. There's a number of upperclassmen sitting here. They're all tuning their instruments. There's a couple of singers who are kind of like figuring out their harmonies and things like that. And when you walk in, she invites anyone who would like to join in or just sing along. And they start basically performing a couple of songs. So as they're kind of performing, Professor Nilo doesn't perform with, like, she has her lute out, and every now and again she, like, strums it or something like that. And you can hear that, like, certain sections of this group are getting, like, louder or softer. She, like, strums it at once, and then, like, there are suddenly dancers that are, like, kind of dancing to the music in time with it, and then strums again, and they're gone. She's giving some sort of demonstration on what bardic magic is capable of. So this class is a little bit shorter than the others because you can't perform for like 3 hours straight. But she basically she kind of talks a little bit about you know, the way that her music works as magic, the way that other people's magic works. She talks about people who cast through dancing, through music, through speaking. And she says that both of her first year classes kind of focus on this. One of them is using unusual magical foci, and then the other one is like a speaking class, basically a public speaking class. Did anyone join in?
Yeah, I danced my butt off.
Cool.
Oh, yeah.
Can I have performance checks?
Oh.
Yeah, I use my ukulele, I use my harp.
I'm singing.
Yeah, that's
So
I
Okay.
have my violin.
Yeah.
I even had my shell.
Alright, so
that was
So
great.
perform.
love that?
Yeah.
Perform. So, yeah, so
So
take your
just a 20?
D20.
Alright,
And then
so
you're
it's
gonna
this
add- What do you
one. The biggest, the most
that one right there.
sides.
With all the
This one?
sides,
Yep.
with the 20 sides.
Yep.
This
What
one.
about you?
Yep.
Yeah.
That one. So you're
Okay,
gonna
so
roll
you're
it.
just gonna roll it. I
Get a 4.
got a 4.
I got 17.
Oh, what was that?
16?
11?
11? No.
18.
18.
18. We're at 18.
18. That's good.
Okay. 18.
Oh wow!
Oh, wow.
So like I danced
You
really fast,
danced,
but I
but
danced with all my
You had
friends.
so much fun.
I had so
and
much fun. I embarrassed
you-
all my friends.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You had a great time.
Yeah.
What do we do now?
Okay, so you would add. So you're going to add your performance skill.
Oh, in our book.
Yep.
Which is what is that, honey?
That's a charisma skill.
oh, I'm sure.
What book is that?
Performance. Do they have?
She has a sheet. So on your that sheet right there.
This one here?
Yep.
Yeah.
So your charisma is the last one.
Oh, charisma is the whole. Okay.
Performance is one of those.
Yeah.
So you're gonna write.
performance right here.
Why does she already have a number?
So I filled in the numbers for her.
Oh, okay.
I can fill in the numbers for you guys too, if you want.
So what do I, what do I
So
write?
you're going to be at next to the performance.
So I got a 4 plus 2.
So 6.
You're
I got an 18 plus 3.
yeah. So she got a 21.
Okay. Do you have a proficiency in that?
In which one?
Performance.
No, I haven't.
I don't know what I'm doing
Okay.
here. I don't either. So I got 17 and I'm gonna take one
So-
away.
So you got a 21.
And where am I
So-
putting that?
Down here.
18 plus 3.
Charisma.
Yeah.
18. What is 11?
3.
That's your like your score in it, but what does that one say? Plus
Plus 0.
Plus 0.
Okay,
So you just
got a
re-roll this-
straight 18.
Yep.
So the 18, where do I put that?
You don't have to
put
write it
anywhere,
down. You
it's
just have to tell me.
telling.
Oh, I have 18.
No,
Yeah.
that's
That's
Oh,
it.
okay, so we don't have to keep track of that.
No.
Okay,
And then
we're not-
so your
She's-
charisma is a
she's-
-1.
Right.
You don't
so-
have anything. So you rolled a 17.
Yes.
So it goes down to a 16.
Okay.
No big deal.
I
still
that's
performed
still
first.
so.
But I had a lot of fun.
So
I
all
was-
4 of you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
All 4 of you actually are individually kind of not necessarily in front of the classroom, in front of the whole class, but she approves of all of your contributions to it. And she actually especially likes your performance. It seems as though you've both amused her and and impressed her with your enthusiasm, at least. So she nods at you and gives you a little wink, and then dismisses the class,
Awesome.
That was a fun class.
That was so much fun.
Oh yeah, you're not talking my language here.
No, I didn't even.
So
It's here, there.
Boom Day is your day off.
Good. Find my place
You're
around.
actually there's a knock on your door probably around 9 a.m. And it's Eileen. She's like, hey, we're gonna go we're gonna go down into Meandra if you want to join us. There's a tavern down there
Okay.
that we want to try out.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Sounds
to me.
good.
That's
You want to go?
Yeah,
Sure.
definitely.
We'll bring you. Do you
So-
want to bring your roommate? Would she like to come?
Sure.
Oh, Gerda?
Yeah,
She's
good.
like, oh yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Oh,
we'll
we got
go together.
whole tribe.
Girls' day out. So Eileen and her friends.
Oh, they're not all girls. Never mind.
No,
a lot of us are
They're
girls.
boys, but it's fine. They're basically girls. So there are a couple ways to get down from the academy into the city. There's like a stairway, which no one takes unless they can avoid it, because it's like this cliff is like probably like 100 feet. It's a tall cliff, and no one wants to climb that many stairs. Going down is a little bit easier, but it's still annoying. There is a magical elevator that basically like it comes up and stops and you get on and then it goes down. And then there are airships that you can take down, like smaller, kind of like more like cable cars really, that will like fly you down to a section of the city. So Eileen says that we're just going to take the elevator, mostly because you don't have to pay for the elevator. But you get to the bottom and you're kind of let out into the city. Eileen kind of makes a beeline for this tavern that they were talking about. You guys spend the day there. Nothing really too exciting happens, but you have a good time. You spend some time together, and you learn a little bit more about each other, and your friendship grows and all that kind of stuff. Sachi every now and again would like get up and leave, and like come back and put like more coins on the table as if he's like going around picking people's pockets.
Who does?
Sachi.
Oh, Sachi.
Yeah, the little
the crow.
So Sachi is he's what's called a kenku. He's a kenku. So they are humanoid crows or wraiths. He's probably a rogue of some sort. But he's a nice guy. Like you can, if you kind of watch him, he's only taking from like obnoxious people who are being annoying or like people that aren't tipping the waitress. Those are the people that he's taking from, and he always stops and like drops some in the tip jar before he comes back.
This is a little Robin Hood.
Yeah, kind of a little bit like that. So yeah, so you guys have a fun day out of the town. You get to see a little bit more of the city.
I spent at least part of the day in the kitchen trying to find out, like, from the cook, like, their secret recipes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And did you get any?
I did, of course, because I'm very charming and really smart. I also talked to Sachi for a while because I come from a long line of sneaky people. So, I want to find out from him.
You kind of like you share some like tips and tricks.
Yeah.
He like talks a little bit about like he's got like a whole like he opens up his jacket and he's got like just like lock picks and and like like little like he's got like wax key molds and he has like all of this like kind of thieving stuff and he's like, I'm so excited to use all this stuff.
And I pull out of my thing and I show him all my little materials all of my tools and my little trinkets and the things that
you end up taking up like most of the table and everyone's like kind of squished away and be like, can you guys put that away please? We're trying to drink. So anyway, so you have a good time. So Lie Day is your introduction to nature magic. You are all instructed to go out to the circle, which is basically where the school or the College of Standing Stones is kind of focused. When you get there, it's like a large circle of standing stones. Each one has a different element kind of carved into it. You're kind of out in nature. As you like kind of step into the circle and kind of like take your place around it, the kind of sounds of the ever-present sounds of like people in the school and even like kind of the dull sounds of the city below, the airships, the horns, the ships sailing out and things like that. They all kind of disappear and all you can hear is like the sound of nature. The bird calls and the buzz of like the late summer insects. You guys are you're kind of left alone there for probably about 5 minutes, and the effect of the place is like very calming. You kind of find yourselves like relaxing a little bit. Your thoughts slowing down just a tad, like enough to kind of get you more focused on kind of like what you're experiencing and the feel of the grass under you as you sit there, the sound of like the birds calling, and then a large like tawny yellow lion stalks into the circle and starts walking around. It kind of like sniffs at all of you. It doesn't touch you, but it kind of like does that, just kind of walks around. And then moves to the center of the circle, sneezes, and then transforms into Professor Lagorok. He has kind of like a little bit of like a smile on his face. It's very, very slight. And he talks more than you heard him talk ever, just about nature magic and particularly transformation magic. He is one of his specialties as a druidic caster is shapeshifting. He, in several places, like takes the form of like an eagle or the lion again. He becomes a horse at one point, and kind of uses that to demonstrate like the different things. He can transform like one part of his body, so like he like goes like this, and you see that like the long lion claws are now at the end of his fingers. So he kind of like he kind of uses more like demonstrative magic. Then he starts talking a little bit about elementals. He summons up 4 elementals, earth, air, fire, and water. Talks about like directing them and how to, do these things, enchanting items. Can I have a perception check for all of you?
So again, 20-sided dice.
20-sided die.
Okay.
Big dice. And you're just gonna roll it into your hammer.
The big, same dice?
Same dice, yep.
19.
Nice.
4. No perception.
3.
5.
There's so many things around here. It's so distracting.
Oh yeah, so mine is actually a 3 and my modifier's a -1.
Awesome. 2. Okay. So the 3 of you are kind of more entranced by like these like little, they're small like little elementals, and they're kind of like frolicking around the circle at this point and like coming up to people, and like the little fire elemental like runs up your arm, and the wind elemental like swirls around your hair, and like
I am totally just entranced.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're very distracting.
And like talking to them. Yeah.
You see, kind of out of the corner of your eye, like kind of standing in the shadows of one of these standing stones, and like not really trying to make herself known, as Professor Thalasan. She's she's kind of like leaning against it, like watching what's happening. The little fire elemental like kind of goes over to her and like sits on her shoulder, and she kind of like nudges it with her head, and it just kind of like floats around her a little bit and then runs back into the center of the circle. So the last thing that Professor Lagorok mentions is one of the aspects of his teaching is working with plants and things like that, and they have an herbarium or like a greenhouse.
Oh, that's great.
Where they grow all of their own supplies. He says that some of you may be asked to go out into the forest, which is not very far away from here, to gather more supplies. Usually it's second or third years that do that, but
I can't wait.
So he mentions briefly that the two classes you guys are going to be focusing in are, at least for this first section of the first year, is natural spell casting and transformation magic. So Morn Day is your theology class. Professor Pennyroyal is she has you all meet in the cathedral area, which also kind of functions a little bit as her classroom. She kind of gives a little bit of her background. She's a priestess of Aegea, the 8 goddesses of the world. Aegea is the goddess of protection and order and justice. Professor Pennyroyal is basically giving like half lecture, half like demonstration of different kinds of things. She talks a little bit about the differences between divine magic and arcane magic. Talks a little bit about the differences in like types of spells. Divine magic, there's a lot of healing with divine magic and a lot of like protection spells and things like that. Whereas arcane focuses more on like elemental magic and things like that. So she has a bunch of like divine foci. She actually does have like a couple of like clips of like holly and mistletoe and things like that, which she says are many druids use these as their focus for casting spells. She also has like a small collection of like objects. She lifts up the key that she wears. She says, "This is my divine focus." It's a holy symbol to Aegea, and like I cast my spells through this. I cast healing spells through it. There's a large, like a handful-sized green gem there that she says is something called a heartstone. Stones like this, she says, are sometimes used to trap souls within them. Things like that. She has like a book, like a prayer book. She says this is another type of them. So her two classes are basically practical theology, which is more about you're going to be learning like some healing techniques like bandaging and first aid and things like that. And then the other one is a divination class. So it's divining the future, basically. So your last day of introductory classes, form day, is your artifice thing. You're invited to the basement workshop in the arcane building, where the other Professor Pennyroyal has just a bunch of like trinkets and tools and all kinds of things kind of laid out. He launches into a kind of a freewheeling explanation of like what he does, which mostly comes down to we experiment with things and find what works and then build things based on those things. So he's got like an area for like rune scribing, and he's got an area for like tinkering with like alchemy and things like that. He's got a whole like laboratory basically down here. He's channeling like lightning power through different things to see if he can store it. He's working on like his specialty, he says, is building like weaponry and like he calls them like bolt throwers and things like that, similar to crossbows. But he allows you to kind of like tinker around with a lot of different things. The one thing he says is that his private workshop where he and the other like teaching assistants work is like through there. That's off limits to anyone who's not a graduate student because there's more dangerous things in there. He says, like the big alchemy setups are in there, and the rune scribing like tools are all in there, and the forge is over there as well. So the stuff that's more dangerous and that you guys probably aren't well equipped to deal with right now is in there. So his first year classes are runic enchanting for weapons and armor.
What is that again?
Runic enchanting, and then an introductory to like smithing and forging. So you're going to learn like some blacksmithing techniques.
Love this.
Intro to forging?
Yes, smithing and forging.
I was brought up near the ocean, so I wasn't forging through the forest, but we did an awful lot with seaweed and shells.
Tina, I think they mean forging like weapons, not foraging.
Forging like
Never mind. Every week
like a blacksmith.
That's why
I was trying to figure out. I was like, oh, do they melt down the sand?
To make glass. That is the kind of
kind of like the whole music thing I did last week. We're all good.
I like it.
Yeah, we all like
That's
it.
my
It's
comic
okay.
relief because I'm
I
a
whispered
bard.
that to you really quietly, so it's not.
I know. No one heard you.
Tina.
Because I'm naturally very quiet.
So, as you guys are walking back
Love to
to the
laugh.
dorm, the dorms together. It's like afternoon at this point. You've just come out of your artifice introduction. You're kind of walking to your dormitory when like out of the shadows of one of these like larger buildings steps like a young man. He looks a little bit haggard. He's got like blonde hair. He looks really tired, and like in like the sense of like he looks like his soul is tired. And he stops in front of you and he's like, "You're here. I need your help."
I understand. What is he saying?
I don't know what an earth
Earth
caller is.
caller?
He called it an earth caller,
An earth caller.
I believe.
Oh, I know. Thank you.
Is it a collar? Like
He's-
call!
No,
Call.
no,
Calling!
Yeah.
Or the caller.
No.
To
no,
call
no,
her.
no. Tell him no. Tell him no.
No.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
I kind of, wait my
It's trapped. So I can show you where the trap is. It's just like a little acid trap, but
Trap.
cool little